How did you discover DeeBaby?
So DeeBaby came up on my Explorer page, or somebody reposted him. I don't remember. I don't think the Explorer page was even out then. It was before Instagram had the Explorer page, I think. It was somebody had posted his music or something, and I had reached out to him. I followed him. I followed him on Instagram. I was working with the first artist that I was working with, and I wasn't really ready to work with any other artist at the time because I was still trying to get familiar with the industry, you could say. So I basically just reached out to him. I followed him just to try to establish a relationship. And then maybe about 7 or 8 months later, I reached out to him and I was like, I told him to keep working. I told him that he makes really good music, and this is music that I can hear on a national platform. And I told him to just to stay consistent and just keep his head up, and that everything will pan out the way that it's panned out so far. So I reached out to him on Instagram. Maybe about 4 months, 5 months after I had the last communication with him. It was maybe at this point it was like I was familiar with DeeBaby for about a year and a half, and actually his rap name, his stage name at the time was Coke Boy D. And I went. My barber had moved to a new barber shop, and I went to go get my beard trimmed. And as I'm getting my beard trimmed, I hear a song that I know I heard snippets to on Instagram. And I look up at the screen, and it's DeeBaby. And I asked the owner of the store, I was like, there's nothing but Hispanics who work at the store. So I'm like, they must know this guy. I'm just ideally speaking, I'm thinking they must know this guy. So I asked the owner of the barbershop, do y'all know DeeBaby? Do y'all know Coke Boy D at the time? And they were like, yeah, that's my family. So I was like, damn, small world. So maybe like the same day, probably reached out to him and told him, hey bro, I met your family today. And then I think we started messaging on Instagram, and he was like, hey bro, let's talk about this music business that you make sound so appealing. So I told him to come to the barbershop the next time I got my beard trimmed the next week. We met at the barbershop. We talked for about a couple hours, and then that's when I told him that I'm in the process of trying to start a record label. I don't work with the artists that I was previously working with, so I'm currently not working with any artists, but I'm trying to sign for artists. You're one of them that I'm trying to sign. Would you be interested in working? I think he took maybe about a week, and then I sent him the contract, and the rest is history.
That's crazy. That's really crazy.
And along the process, I want to ask, like, what are some of the steps that you took to, like, basically breaking DeeBaby to the world?
I basically just, this whole industry is trial and error. You have to try out a bunch of shit and figure out what works and what doesn't work. Saying that to say, I would watch how independent artists on a scale of, in particular, D Flowers and OTB Fastlane. It was at the time where D Flowers was dropping very consistently. He was on World Star on every video. He was one of the only artists from Houston who was getting on World Star. At the time, World Star was a very, very big platform. And I always thought that at the time, World Star should always be on an artist's agenda. Like it should always be part of the plan within some point of their career to be on World Star for a consistent period of time to help expand your audience. Because at the time, it was obviously there wasn't too many YouTube pages that you could upload to, and I think it was very expensive, so it was very hard to get on World Star. You had to have a good relationship with them, where you had to pay like $8,000 a video. So I'm like, okay, he's investing into his career. So I just kind of watched D Flowers drops, and I would kind of like dissect them, and I would look at OTB Fastlane's drops, and I would dissect them. And I don't know if they did this on purpose, but I would always see them drop songs on YouTube before they would drop songs on like the digital streaming platforms that you can actually go stream on Apple Music and YouTube. And I'm like, Apple Music and Spotify or whatever the case is. I was like, maybe they're doing it to up the stream. I mean, up the views on the video. So I took it as like a part of my blueprint, and I would wait about 2 weeks to drop the audio on platforms until I figured out I was losing money. So I don't do that anymore. But saying all that to say, D Flowers, OTV Fastlane, and then there was like independent artists like Money Man, Young Dolph that I would kind of like just watch how they release, watch how they roll out, and I would take these marketing schemes from the rollout, and I would kind of just put my own marketing scheme together, and we just tried out a bunch of different stuff, and figured out what works for us, and we put more money in those avenues. You have to have a lot of money to spend in this music industry to succeed. It's very, very hard to do if you don't have funds. If you do not have a lot of money, it's very, very, very unlikely that you will succeed.